Hello and welcome to the latest CyberFirst 21 event. I think this is number 11 out of 14. So wow, what a week we've had. 4 events already and 3 more next week to look out for. So welcome, as I've said, to CyberFirst 21, the North East's biggest cybersecurity festival. And if Claire could bring us up our slides, please. That's great. Thank you very much, Claire. So, as I said, now in its 4th year, got 14 events across this month, with something really for everyone. We're trying to, one of the key areas that we're working on is around skills, and this event is really about skills and opportunity to get new jobs, to grow new careers, and to really get involved in an exciting and dynamic industry. So here's the format for this afternoon. I'm going to give a little introduction to Cyber North. Then we're going to hear from Philip Anderson, Senior Lecturer at Northumbria University, about CyberFirst, another exciting initiative from the National Cybersecurity Centre about helping young people in the industry. Then we're going to hear about the new T-levels from Sam Ogle, Curriculum Manager at Sunderland College, and that's another initiative, a national initiative on helping bring more technical skills to the industry, I think. Then I'm going to come back and talk to you about some work that we did earlier on in the year with DCMS around what we've found in terms of cybersecurity skills and what's going on in the market. And then we've got Dr. Meera Sarma and Dr. Matheus are going to talk to us about what's missing in the education and what the key skills you need to put going forward in Industry 4.0 and around cybersecurity. And then we've got a very short whistle-stop tour of Sunderland College, a flyby through the wonders of technology. And then there'll be a short discussion between myself, Philip Anderson, Sam Ogle, and Meera and Thomas, if we've got time. Okay, next slide, please, Claire. So CyberFirst is brought to you by Cyber North, Dynamo North East cybersecurity cluster for the North East region. We're supported by Accenture and the Innovation Super Network, and we're eternally grateful for them to helping us out with this Cyber North ongoing. So we're recognised by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and the National Cybersecurity Centres representing the region. We're also members of the UK Cyber Cluster Collaboration, or UKC3, which does what it says in the tin, and I'll come back to that in a minute. And we're also members of Global EPIC, an international collaboration of cybersecurity clusters. So I think we can demonstrate a presence both locally, nationally, and now internationally. So we're working to grow the industry across the region to position it as a great place to do cybersecurity business. We're working to grow jobs, highly skilled, well-paid and interesting jobs. And I think today's event really plays to that audience. We're doing this in 4 ways. First is making a lot of noise to raise awareness and build belief in the region that it really can be that place. We do this through events culminating in CyberFirst through September. And we've certainly made progress in this area. Very pleased with the progress we've made, particularly around our relationships with regional and national government. The second thing we do is we support existing businesses to grow in a collaborative yet competitive framework. And we're working on mechanisms to support this and bring opportunity to the 70 or so businesses that work in the region in cybersecurity. The third thing, though, we need to do is to develop new businesses. We need more new businesses in the region. And we're doing this by developing a Cybersecurity Innovation Centre, or ORCANE as we're calling this. We're working with Newcastle University, Accenture and Plexel, who run LORCA, the London Office of Rapid Cyber Advancement, which is our incubation site and an innovation centre in London. So we're using that to try and create something similar, though a little earlier on in their life cycle. The full business case has been developed for this with DCMS, central government and the Cabinet Office. And like everybody in central government, we're just waiting to see if funding will be available. And the last thing we do, which this event really plays to, is we're trying to address the skills shortage. We're trying to support young people into careers within the cybersecurity sector, or people who want a change of job, or people who are thinking that now's the time to go and do something different. And we undertook a large piece of work earlier this year with the support of DCMS, and I'll be coming back to that later on in this event today. Next slide, please. So I said I'd come back to UKC3, or the UK Cyber Cluster Collaboration. This is an exciting new venture which is bringing all of the UK security clusters together, following a process of recognition. I think there are about 20 in the country that we're aware of, and just under half of those have been recognised. And I'm pleased to say that Cyber North is one of those clusters that's been recognised. So not only we are a recognised cluster, but we're right at the heart of the organisation, taking responsibility for the finance and procedures. So put us in a really good place. So UK Cyber Cluster Collaboration is working on 3 areas: ecosystem development, innovation, and skills, trying to make sure that the activities across the country are coordinated. We learn from each other, learn good practice, etc., etc. And there's no surprise there, because they're the very things that we're trying to work on locally. DCMS have given us some financial support, and on the back of that, we've had a small amount of funding, and I'm using that money to put a team of people together to get a better understanding of the market, engage with it better, and give us clearer direction for the years ahead. Next slide, please. So as you can see, there's a huge amount of stuff that's going on within Cyber North, and if you're involved in cybersecurity in any way within the region, please be a part of what we're trying to do. Okay, Claire, could I ask then that my first speaker of the day, really, Philip Anderson from Northumbria University, somebody I've known for an awful long time and been an enormous help in Cyber North. So Philip, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you very much. You're too polite, Phil.
You should see what
very much.
Behind your back.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. The whole afternoon session and picking up on what Phil started to discuss is around looking at the skills shortage in cybersecurity. I mean, with a regional focus as well. In trying to look at it, I mean, it's a massive area. It shouldn't be underestimated. I mean, it's a significant challenge in what we're trying to do, but we can slowly chip away, and we can do as much as we can. So my role, actually, I'll just quickly share my screen. You'll probably get a repeated picture of me until I just quickly drop away. So I'm not going to go full screen because I've only got a couple of slides. It's just to highlight it. So I am the NCSC, the National Cybersecurity Centre, created a cyber volunteer role a few years ago across the UK, and it was a strategy that they developed, and it was trying to find a missing piece to the puzzle they've got, and it was to link. Almost a link. The cyber volunteer would be linked between their cyber volunteers regional schools and the NCSC themselves. So I became involved in that. They're always looking for volunteers as well. So if you are interested, the best way to describe it is the more the merrier. Please, if you, I mean, I'll walk you through the NCSC website because it's just rammed down full of useful resources. But again, if you are interested, just please get in touch with them directly. I think if I heard correctly this afternoon, the requirement for being SC cleared as well is temporarily being removed. But again, don't take my word for it, but just double check. So there are opportunities available. So the CyberFirst volunteers is what we do. Obviously, the CyberFirst program that was created by the NCSC. It's morphed, it's developed, obviously, a word to what it was originally. This slide here is just to pick up on a couple of things. So originally the whole CyberFirst was to identify young people aged between 11 and 17, and it's to get them excited around it and generate a passion around the use of tech in how it evolved and how it's used, and obviously linking that into the world of cybersecurity. I mean, over the years, there's been a massive drive for organizations and businesses to go digital, even before obviously the global pandemic, and everybody shifted virtually overnight into an online world. I mean, and it's just spiked the need for cybersecurity awareness. So again, one of the NCSC drive is around creating or trying to address this skills shortage across the UK. Interestingly, I read an article, I think it was a day or two ago, and it was via somebody I follow on LinkedIn. And interestingly, the US I would think it's a global issue, but interestingly, the US were having a similar problem in attracting people into the cybersecurity industry. The individual I was following is an academic in a US university, and they've got all kinds of different programs going on and linking into their equivalents in the US of the NCSC and other governmental departments. And again, so I mean, it's it's a global issue. The demand's there. It's never going to go away. So that when the NCSE's come up with a variety of programs is probably the best way to describe them, with various different things. So for example, and I've had students, there's a couple of students who recently graduated that benefited from a bursary scheme. They provided a little bit of financial support to any undergraduate student wanting to go through the university. They've also got degree apprenticeship schemes that are available linked to universities. They've developed a girls only competition as well. There's a big push to try and address the gender imbalance currently, and I mean it's not unusual. It tends to be a computing related challenge anyway, but obviously in cybersecurity it's something. I mean, there's no barriers. There shouldn't be any barriers to anybody coming in into cybersecurity, but it's this perception that we're trying to knock down and make people understand a bit better. So I mean, they've been really successful in doing it. There's the girls only competition. There's thousands of free places on the CyberFirst courses that are delivered through UK university colleges, and obviously the scheme that I'm quite heavily involved in is around encouraging schools and colleges to join the CyberFirst. And it may seem like an onerous thing about all this, that and the other, but quite an awful lot of the schools and colleges are probably doing quite a bit already around the CyberFirst. They probably already meet quite a few of the requirements. So again, it's part of my, I mean, the cyber volunteer is quite a varied role. It's to encourage students, but it's also looking at teachers and schools. And we've got 2 CyberFirst schools in the region. There's the Royal Grammar and there's the UTC Newcastle. So we've got 2, and we obviously want more than happy to want more to come along and get involved and become a CyberFirst school. So I'll touch on it when I go through the website, but there's differences, gold, silver and bronze. But we see it as the NCSE see as a stepping stone, and there's, to be honest, from my interaction with the NCSE, that they are more than happy to provide time, provide resources to help you get through whatever you may want to do to get involved in a girls only competition. I think there's a call out, and more recently, I think it was this year, the NCSE have created what's called a Cyber Sprinters, which looks at 7 to 11-year-olds. But if I quickly hop over to the NCSE website, so I mean, if you're interested, you don't have to remember the URL. If you just type in NCSE and CyberFirst into any search engine, it'll come up with it. So it'll give you, it'll give you a brief overview of what's going on, but it'll pick up on some of the things. So the girls competition we've got here. So I thought there was a new one out. So again, there's registrations are available. Starts beginning next month, and then there's qualifiers, semi-finals and grand finals. It's a really good event. If anybody's interested, come and talk to me. Get in touch if you want, if you're a school that's interested, or if you know anybody within a school, or if you've got daughters that would be interested in this. I think it doesn't sound, some people maybe put off with it about being a national competition, but don't let it, it's not as onerous or as frightening as it first seems. But it's, yeah, that was it. The Highgate School from London won it last year. So there's obviously a bit of kudos that goes around if your school wins, and it would be nice to get one from the North East if we can win it. And again, there's different ones. I mean, there's all kinds of different CyberFirst courses. You've got Defenders, Futures, and Advanced. And again, there's different elements. You've got the different Trailblazers, Adventurers. So if I just hop on the next slide, they've pretty much broken it down into there's different elements to get involved in. So you've got your Trailblazers right at the beginning, and then I mean, there's all kinds of things, and the NCSE are more than happy for you just to pick up and get involved in whatever you may need. And obviously post school, you've got your CyberFirst bursaries, your CyberFirst academies, and obviously you've got your CyberFirst degree apprenticeship programs as well. So all this information I'm going through, one of the reasons I thought about putting it in slides, but I thought it was just as easy just to go through, and if you go along and look at the website, this is what you're going to get. So the resources, the website is jammed full of resources. There's information about the bursary and apprenticeship schemes, the CyberFirst schools and colleges. If you're a school or a college and you're interested in becoming The expression of interest, so there's a new call just gone out 3 days ago, and then there's an expression of interest the 18th of October. That call will close on the 19th. So I get involved as part of the cyber volunteer. I'm a part of a panel who goes through and judges the applications. Obviously don't do ones within the Northeast, so I do ones. I tend to get ones from Wales and the southwest, Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland I had recently. Again, it may feel like, you know, I appreciate schools and colleges have got an awful lot already to balance and juggle, and it's why take on more. But again, if there's one thing I can say, it's not an onerous task. If you're interested, or you know somebody is interested and they don't even know where to start, there's obviously information on the website. If you scroll down, there's expressions of interest forms, there's applications. Please feel free to contact me. My email address, I'll quickly leave it on last thing before I finish talking. My email address there. Please feel free to come talk to me. If you want, you can by all means contact the NCSC directly. I think there'll be a contact name on there as well. They've got examples on the website as well. So there's examples from a gold application. There's examples from bronze application. I mean, don't think you've got to go in and achieve the gold application from the get-go. If you want, and you're not quite sure, look at the requirements for the bronze application and just get your foot in the door. And then the NCSC are more than happy to support you getting up and working up towards the silver and the gold. It's the one thing I can say about the NCSC and how I've worked with them around this initiative. They are desperate to, and it's desperate in a positive way, they're desperate to help people, they're desperate to support this. They know there's a skills shortage, they know there's shortages with female students in trying to address that balance in the ethnic. And I mean, it's quite interesting when we go and look at review some of the CyberFirst applications of the different schools across the region. There's very regional niches amongst it. So this is one of the reasons why I work with Phil quite closely. We're both quite passionate about it in selling the CyberFirst within the region and developing it. But if we want to push it and we want to develop it within the region, then obviously there's got to be a strong body if people they're able to come into this. So like I say, there's once you start and unpick this whole thing, there's quite a few challenges out there. So we start and we're working with people. I mean, the Cyber North, the CyberFirst initiatives, and we've done some good work as well. And we're relying on we've got a little group that we work quite closely, and we're trying to talk to schools and understand schools going forward and how we can do things as well. And lastly, it's just a little cyber sprinters thing. You'll find that, and there's just loads of little online stuff. The one thing that the NCSC are not short of is resources for you to use. If you work in a school, or somebody that works in a school, by all means just direct them to the website. There's things you can pick up and you can use straight into classes and stuff like that if anybody wants it, or if you want to give it to your students as supplementary material. But we're trying to develop. It's like the old rolling stone and pushing a snowball down the hill and gathering the momentum. I think we've managed to make a small snowball, and we're starting to push it down the hill, and we want to keep the momentum going, and we want the Northeast to stand out amongst the other regions as this, and we want the students and the kids at school for this particular area to receive the best information, the best encouragement they can to go forward as well. But yeah, that is pretty much me. I'll just quickly, if anybody, I'll just leave it like that. But by all means, feel free to contact me or Phil Jackman. By all means, we can have a quick chat about anything CyberFirst related, anything like that. Thank you very much, Phil.
Thanks, great, Philip. And can you just tell me then? So what's the role of the ambassador? What do they do?
I think it's like I probably didn't do it justice. I think the NCSC have obviously, it's not going to be, and I think we've all acknowledged it, it's never going to be an overnight fix. There's a big challenge to be taken on here. So obviously the NCSC, when they created the CyberFirst scheme, realised from an issue that it's getting the schools engaged and it's managing the schools, which ones have engaged and getting more on board. And I think from a resource perspective, I think they've realised it's a big challenge. So they've created these CyberFirst volunteers that have got a passion about their region and have got a passion around cybersecurity to then help them bridge the gap and manage it, so to speak. So, for example, we're working with the Royal Grammar School in doing a little bit more going forward, understanding what they want, but then getting them to lead and develop things to try and draw in other schools as well. So I think it's like I describe us as the man in the middle. If I can use I'll use a cybersecurity term, or the person in the middle, to try and support the NCSE's work, but having an ear in the region, and we understand the region a little bit more, so we can provide a little bit more directed feedback or directed discussion about what we think the needs are. Certainly from what I've found out is that we are very different. We do very different things from Northern Ireland, for example, and from Wales. Recent meeting, it's clear that the Welsh regional government are quite easy to engage. Or the right people from governmental departments are quite easier. It's much easier with them to engage in events, whereas obviously within England that's a little bit more of a challenge. So we're doing things slightly differently. But again, the NCSE's got different initiatives going off across the UK, and it's just understanding them and how we can push it within this region as well. So, for example, you've got the cyber escape room. The NCSE have I don't know whether they've pinched your idea or whether it was there before you've definitely got there first. But they've obviously realised there's a possible initiative around this to encourage people to, and it's getting people. I mean, we know that people go through the system. We know they take the GCSEs, they take the A levels. It's getting those people before that they had a little spark, or trying to create that spark at school that then goes on. And I think it's just all these different initiatives they're trying to do. But it's a massive challenge. And the work you've done, DCMS as well, you've got all these different skills, and you've got all these different colleges, and you've got all these different, even the year groups as well. And I mean, we're looking at the cyber sprinters is now relatively new, and that's looking at 7 to 11-year-olds just to get them interested and get them involved, because potentially, certainly with women, there's some research that suggests even as young as 7 or 8, they're already turned off by tech. Although I think my youngest has just turned 7, and I think she would probably be the exception to the rule, because she's permanently playing on a mobile phone. But that may be a different thing. But it's just to help this momentum go and get things done within the region.
Excellent, Philip. Thank you very much. So basically what we need is, I think, more people who can engage with schools and be ambassadors for the cybersecurity industry. So we're not necessarily just talking about today's problem in terms of skills, but we're talking about the future. It's only going to be a rapidly growing industry. We need much more diversity. We need many more people from disenfranchised backgrounds, and they're just, at this moment, they're not coming through. And I think that's been demonstrated in our engagement with schools so far. It's been the Royal Grammar School and the UTC. We need many other schools from across the region. So thank you very much. If you could bring up my slides again, please. So what I said was that I'd like to talk to, or bring back to, some work that we engaged with earlier in the year. We're very fortunate, I think, through the work that we've been doing with Cyber North, to have developed a much closer relationship with the DCMS, Department for Culture, for Digital Culture, Media and Sport. I think prior to Cyber North's involvement, there really wasn't a recognition that the North East had much to offer in terms of cybersecurity. And I think we've changed that dynamic significantly. Indeed, not next week, but the week after, we're down at DCMS to have a meeting to talk to them about what next for the region and what next for the cyber clusters across the country. So, as I said, earlier this year, I think it was February, we engaged with them to give us a small amount of money, and we, on the back of that, did some work around improving the understanding of what's going on within the market. So can I have the next slide, please, Claire? Yeah, so what I'm going to talk to you about is what we found out about cybersecurity skills. So what we did was we got a number of groups together, about 20 people at each group, those that represented people in education, those that represent employers, those that represented people who had recently been employed or were struggling to get employment, to try and understand that, because I'm told, I've been told many a times, that a lack of skilled cybersecurity professionals is given a reason for holding businesses back from growth. And I just didn't know whether that was true or not. So we decided to do this work to try and find out. What's clear, though, that there is a disconnect in the North East region between the high number of students leaving university with cybersecurity qualifications. The region has 4, possibly 5 universities who are churning out or producing students, high quality students who've got the necessary cybersecurity skills. Indeed, the region has 2 academic centres of excellence. We're the only city outside of London in the UK that has 2 centres of excellence, centres of academic excellence, in Newcastle and Northumbria. So there's a disconnect between that and a lack of employable people in the region. Businesses are telling me it's hard to find the right people. Others are saying it's hard to find a job. Now, whilst there's a huge global demand for skilled cybersecurity professionals, I think this is always going to be the case, but there's a need, therefore, to attract more young people to think of cybersecurity as a career. So there's a lot of assumptions about the reasons behind these issues, but little evidence was gathered of what was really going on in the sector specific to the region. And that's why we got those groups together. So we in Cyber North, as the cyber cluster for the North East region, with Dynamo North East support and with DCMS support, we held a series of events to firstly gain a better understanding of the issues that are affecting employment in the region, in the North East cybersecurity industry, to test those understanding against the key segments within the cybersecurity market: schools, universities, businesses, local and national government. And then the third thing was to see how we could promote national initiatives to address skills shortages, such as CyberFirst, either today's skills shortages or perceived and future skills shortages. So the information we gathered will allow Cyber North to target its effort better on improving employability in the region's cybersecurity sector, and it'll act as a template for other clusters to address their own region's issues. And I'm going to restart this work as soon as CyberFest is over. Can we have a next slide, Claire, please? So these are some of the things that we found through this investigation. The first is the cybersecurity market is spoken of as if it's one thing. It's not. It's a highly complex arrangement of competing, coordinating and interrelated organizations, each with different expectations and needs. And it's clear that the different players in each of those sectors could work together much better. So rather than talking about cybersecurity or talking about the market, we need to understand the different players and why they come to it and what they need from it and what they mean by the cybersecurity market. Next slide, please, Claire. So across the region, we're aware of about 70 active companies that either develop and sell cybersecurity related hardware and or software, or implement and support cybersecurity related hardware and or software that others have developed, or deliver cybersecurity related services such as pen testing, recovery, etc., etc. So there are, as far as I'm aware, 70 active companies, and we're still gathering information about that. I talked earlier about the money that we're getting with UKC3, and that's going to help us gain that better understanding of exactly why these people are in the market, what they're intended to do, their niche levels of the niche that they are working in. Because again, those 70 companies are completely different in what they're trying to do. They're occupying different niches within that assumed single market. Next slide, please. So the third thing that we found was that those 70 companies don't represent the whole of the market, far from it. There are many other organizations in the region that deliver in-house cybersecurity services to their own organization in both the public, the private, and the third sectors. So for example, Nissan, my understanding is that the European cybersecurity headquarters is in Washington. And so there's a significant chunk of people delivering cybersecurity services in a non-cybersecurity business. The same with NHS BSA, the local authorities, etc. They all have significant cybersecurity skill, and they wouldn't consider themselves as a cybersecurity company. And you already see the distortion in the word cybersecurity market from that. So there's a number of companies that also provide cybersecurity related advice, but don't deliver any specific products. So they are doing training, for example, and the like of that. And so they're not actually delivering the service, they're just helping people to understand this and deliver their training on the back of that. So provider, there's a list of companies that provide cybersecurity related support services, things like legal advice, insurance, yes, financial advice, all this kind of thing that needs to go and wrapped around cybersecurity services. And then again, there are companies which are consumers of cybersecurity services, and they all have a part to play in the general market that we're talking about. Next slide, please, Claire. So the next thing that we found was that the majority of people, therefore, who are working in cybersecurity don't work in cybersecurity companies, cybersecurity providers. In fact, the minority of people working in cybersecurity work in those kind of companies. There perhaps some what's that I'm looking for? Investigation and some analysis of the Irish market, for example, the Southern Irish market, would suggest that something between 7 and 10 times the number of people who work in cybersecurity companies are actually working in cyber outside of that sector. So our belief is that we have something like 1,600 people directly employed in cybersecurity by cybersecurity firms, and if you multiply that up 7 or 10 times, something like 11,500 people are actually working in cybersecurity. The issue, though, is that many of these people don't realize it. It's not a full-time job. It's part of their role. It's part of their role because they happen to know how to work IT and they're given that responsibility. And so again, an amorphous picture. And the fifth thing that we learned then was that within each segment, with each segment there are additional specialisms. And this has led to confusion as to what exactly meant, with each organization and each individual expecting and requiring something different from the market. Next slide, please, Claire. So on the back of this, there's a general lack of understanding around what cybersecurity is, as I've already said. The role that professionals will play within an organization and how resilience fits with the governance and operation of the business. Specialists are not understood or appreciated until someone has experience of working within an organization. There's an organization called Cyber who've done a huge amount of investigating into this, and they've found 20 or so different functions that go in to make up cybersecurity provision. And every company is at a different stage in terms of where they are at. So specialists are not understood, not appreciated, and the lack of experience of working within a specific organization. Only through working in an organization you'll get a full understanding of what it is that the issues that they're trying to address. The next thing that we found was that there is a difference between theoretical cybersecurity work and its practical application. And this is the issue that companies raised with us most of all. So when joining a company, cybersecurity professionals are expected to deal with a broad range of activities and not just cyber, often at timescales dictated by the customer. And this is predominantly true of smaller organizations, which the Northeast has a significant proportion of. The bigger the organization, the more specialized you can become, but most jobs are in small to medium-sized companies in the region. So what businesses are looking for is broader business skills, such as the ability to write reports, engage, communicate with customers, project management, etc., and a real understanding of how that cybersecurity expert is going to fit in with the business. So a cybersecurity expert within an organization would still need to understand the technical architecture and how this relates to business needs. So organizations with small teams are particularly challenged in attracting people with this broad range of skills, either because they don't exist and that perfect person doesn't exist, or they can't afford the kind of skills that they need to have. So that this leaves many organizations just scratching their head and thinking, what am I going to do about this? And sticking their head in the sand quite often. So next slide, please, Claire. So the next thing is that we found was that there is a real lack of understanding how the local job market functions. Advertising for jobs is particularly difficult because of the inherent complexity of the market. The picture that I'm just trying to paint shows that it's actually quite hard to recruit people to fill those roles that we're trying to fill. It's quite difficult to articulate what a role will entail in a language that novices will understand and be able to apply for. Generic job sites lack the focus needed to address this issue. And there's also a lack of understanding how the regional job market functions and the interrelation between the different players. So it's difficult often to know who to turn to get that advice. And it's great that we've seen Philip today and Sam, and they're people who we need to expose more to the general public and people interested in careers in cybersecurity. These are the people that people can turn to and ask for advice, very good advice about what it is that they need to do and how to get those skills. And then the ninth thing that we discovered was that entry-level roles are few and far between, making it quite difficult for people to gain the experience required to fill the role expected of them. The problem with cybersecurity is that if you're bringing somebody in to look at your infrastructure and get into the guts of it, you're going to have to trust them implicitly. Are you going to trust somebody to that degree who's a sort of entry-level employee or someone who's just started with the organization? So companies are asking for 3 to 5 years experience when prospective employees just cannot gain that experience because they don't have the opportunity to engage with companies. Next slide, please, Claire. Just take the opportunity to have a quick drink while and get that sorted. So another thing which was interesting is that companies are telling it's actually often easier to reskill existing employees within the business rather than recruiting external people. Taking people who show an aptitude for cybersecurity or have a general grounding in IT. This may offer a better route for prospective employees and employers than a direct external recruitment because the people in the business already have an understanding of how the business operates and the role that cybersecurity could function within that business. And in many cases for a business, that's more important than necessarily the direct cybersecurity skills. So that was interesting. Existing older employees and those recently made redundant could be a good source there for future talent. And the 11th thing that we found, and it goes back to that trust model, and some roles require clearance, security clearance, DBS clearance, for example, and this can be costly and time intensive and can act as a barrier to employment. Again, businesses with small teams especially struggle with what it is that they're getting that kind of clearance. Okay, next slide, please, Claire. Good, thank you. Yeah, the 12th thing found, and I think we're nearly getting towards the end of what we've found, but the large majority of students get jobs. In fact, the vast majority of students get jobs, not necessarily straight away, though this may not be in the subject that they necessarily studied. So whether they study cybersecurity at university and they come out, it may not be a cybersecurity career that they go into, though the vast majority, in the high 90% of university students get jobs. I read a statistic that after 5 years, only 40% of students are working in the field that they studied. So whilst there's a significant number of cybersecurity students being created, there's a significant bleed of that skill set into other roles and other jobs. And they may end up doing those kind of things that we've talked a bit earlier. Most FE college students either go on to higher education or into apprenticeships. So cybersecurity is having to compete with other career choices, which is driving up salary expectations, and the ability to deliver work online is leading to a much more fluid labour force. So we've seen a fairly new phenomenon through COVID of people being able to work, really change jobs without changing their desk. So they can be working for a local company one day and attracted to, say, a London company or a Birmingham company the next day, and they can move that job without moving their desks. And this means that the local market is under intense pressure to pay wages of those organisations outside of the region, which in the main are significantly higher. Now, this is going to take some time to work through, and nobody knows how the market is going to sort out as we go forward. Could somebody just tell me if they can hear me? So,
yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, just somebody said that lost their sound, and I'm afraid it is you. Everybody else has got sound, so that's fine. It's perhaps worth noting that we are recording this, and we will be publishing that from October, from the beginning of October. So where did I get to? Yes, so there's a dynamic shift in the labour market at the moment. I have no idea what it's going to take, so I don't think anybody can work out where this is going to settle. But at the moment, the labour market is much more fluid, and people can work really around the world from their desk, wherever they happen to be sitting. So I'm aware of companies working, individuals working in Canadian companies, etc., etc. We've got to get out 30 times a day, but other than that, that's fine. Okay, the 13th thing that we found was that despite considerable effort, industry and the learning sector don't work as effectively together as they could. Now, Sam talked about businesses working with T-levels, and that's great to see that starting. But I think there's a significant amount of work more to be done. Students need much more industry experience to be able to be relevant to employers, and need to have a broader understanding of business and not just technical skills. So business has a much greater role to play, I think, in helping itself to fill some of these knowledge gaps that they're experiencing. Next slide, Claire, please. Okay, you may have seen some little squares up here, and that was Claire trying to check some questions, but there you go. But you can't do that because she's showing my slides at the same time. The vagaries of modern technology. So the next thing that we found was that the learning sector often develops courses which attract potential students and not necessarily relevant to the needs of industry. In universities or businesses, they need to attract students, to attract funding, to be able to put on courses and pay their wages. So they need to set up courses that people want to come and study. So NCSC accreditation, for example, doesn't necessarily translate directly into industry. So while universities are turning out a lot of technical hackers, which while needed, is perhaps disproportionate to what the market is actually demanding. So the region's good at turning out technically competent graduates, but is less able to develop those suitable as, say, consultants, for example. The learning sector needs to work with a broader range of companies to reflect the diverse nature of the industry. So this is the real opportunity, I think, for the learning sector and industry to work together, to be much clearer about what it is that they want, and not necessarily skew the courses completely, but just to make sure that some of those basic business skills are built into some of the courses that the universities and FA colleges are providing. The next thing is that a focus is required on making those aspects of the industry that seem less attractive more interesting for students. So kind of building on what we just talked about. So efforts required to harness the enthusiasm to study in a specific subject direction, in a specific direction, to make it more relevant. So that kind of just what I've said, building in some of those things that businesses need into existing courses, slight tweaking to make them more relevant, but still as exciting and still as attractive to young people to bring them on board. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you, Claire. So there are examples, however, where the relationship really works well. We've seen placement years or sandwich courses, year-long programs in which a student takes a year out of their degree to work in industry. They work on a full-time basis and get paid like any other regular employee. We've heard talk about degree apprenticeships today, a particular type of job which combines work with higher level learning and can lead to an undergraduate or postgraduate degree. So apprentices spend most of the week at work, but they also spend at least 20% of their time off the job study or training. Sam gave us some great background into T-levels, new courses which are developing all the time, which follow the GCSEs and equivalent to 3 A-levels. So these 2-year courses allow students a mixture of classroom learning and on-the-job experience, 45 days or 315 hours. It's kind of an academic qualification, an A-level qualification with that experience in business and that kind of trying before you get engage yourself. A lot of the FE colleges have set up digital advisory boards, which is a select panel of experts who exist outside of the company's executive or the school's executive structure and board of directors. Among other things, digital advisory boards validate new concepts and innovations before implementation, and they act as a sort of digital innovation investment committee, and they allow that break between what businesses are wanting and what schools and colleges and universities are able to offer to be closed. They provide digital and data insight across all areas, including strategy, customer experience, product innovation, and operations. And it's great to see those develop. And most of them are at early stage, but it's great to see those developing. Northumbria University has a cyber clinic which is providing an avenue for students to learn and practice skills that are related to pen testing, ethical hacking, as well as explore the use of digital forensic tools. And the Cyber Clinic is able to provide consultancy services to business in Newcastle and beyond, so they can mitigate any information security risk they unknowingly possess. Sorry, that was a Freudian slip. And finally, on this slide, the North East Business Resilience Centre. I don't know if you're aware of this, but this is a partnership between the police and industry. It brings together the police, national financial institutions, and tech experts with local cyber experts and businesses to ensure the delivery of cyber safety for everyone. It allows small businesses and charities to have access to students to help develop their real life skills. And you might think, okay, well, this is going to compete with existing commercial businesses, but in many ways it doesn't, because the market that they're attracting isn't a market that is currently aware of what they need to get resolved in cybersecurity. So not only does it bring those companies into the market, which could then go on to normal commercial providers, but it also gives an opportunity for students to think about their career and understand that how applying cybersecurity in a business context. And we've seen some great students come through that. And if you're interested in what they get up to, we ran a fortnightly in conversation, and the latest one was with a young woman called Ikra Haq, who's been through Northumbria University and this internment at Nissan, and is now working in a cybersecurity role within Celerity. Next slide, please. So the certification and technical groups representing the industry could play a bigger role in helping to shape the market. So there are a number of organizations that work with those people who are technically qualified, helping them to build their skills, coordinate their activities, corral them into a homogenous commodity. So people like OWASP, IC Squared, ISACA, the North East Ladies Hacking Society. These are organizations that play a major role in once people are in the industry. And I think they could play a much bigger role in helping people to think about how coming into the industry. And that's something that we're going to talk about. Next slide, please. So we're continuing to try and raise awareness of cybersecurity. We've talked about the issues that we've faced, and the question is now what we're going to do about it. So I think there's some things that we need to do, and I'm going to quickly go through some of those. The first is I think we need to move the narrative away from fear and lack of understanding to an opportunity for good life and business management along the lines of good security and risk management. There's huge opportunity in the cybersecurity industry, fantastic jobs, and we need to move the whole discussion away from that fear to opportunity. I think we need to avoid cliches such as blokes in hoodies that portray the problem simplistically and encourage a narrow section of society to want to engage with the issues. We need many more people than white boys in hoodies. Yeah? National efforts therefore need to portray a wider and more inclusive image of the sector. There are roles for every person, every diversity and every background to get involved. And we need to recognise the different players that go to support cybersecurity activities, including the technical, planning, communication, governance, risk compliance space, learning spaces. So this isn't just a technical problem, it's a problem of engaging with people, a problem of communicating with people, it's a problem of marketing the problems, it's a problem of understanding the issues that businesses are facing. So whilst there is a significant technical role, it's not just a technical problem that we're trying to face. Next slide, please, Claire. We need to raise the awareness of the sector, and events like this will continue to do that. The industry has many roles to offer, then these need to be much more attractive to prospective students and employees. Different hooks need to be used to identify it and promote it to bring different people in. We need to think about a language. We need to downplay the difference between exciting red roles, where you attack people, and dull blue roles, where you try and defend people. A holistic approach is required, where all roles are of value and which encourages people with different skills and styles to want to work in the sector. There's a need for more opportunity for student places in business, give them insight into real working environments. The role of cybersecurity in business needs highlighting better to help students understand the different risk appetites within business. Events should be held to demonstrate the wide range of skills required and opportunities available. Doing, for example, projects that students can take under supervision of a business partner or practical experience in an immersive lab. And I understand that we had conversation with Teesside University, who are doing this very same thing around industry. And as I said, there needs to be recognition that all technology is happening in technology businesses, and that most cybersecurity requirements are in a consuming business. Claire, next slide, please. And I assure you, I'm getting towards the end. So we need to support the sector to help itself. A better understanding of what cybersecurity is and the different roles in the sector should be developed and promoted. We need roadmaps of existing cybersecurity specialists documented showing how they've arrived at the role. There are many people in this industry who've had a languages background, and so we shouldn't always think that this is a technical issue. We're going to develop a register of key people within the sector, people you can turn to when you need information about schools, colleges, recruitment, careers expert, etc. We need to engender a culture of support within businesses and within learning, with stakeholders committing time and some resource to help address skills and employee shortages, reflecting how busy most companies are at present. The sector should work with central, regional government to support initiatives such as CyberFirst, which Philip took us through earlier, and the sector needs to review its language to make sure that it's more inclusive and brings in people of much greater diverse backgrounds. Next slide, please, Claire. And we need to promote the recruitment pathways that exist. So the routes that people currently use to get into cyber need to be better understood through more effective research and analysis. The existing known pathways should be promoted better to gain a wider understanding, especially in businesses as well as parents, carers, things like degrees, apprenticeships, T-levels, etc., internal promotion. Collaboration and joint events such as shared apprenticeship projects, project rotation, broad experience, thinking about new ways to bring in different types of people. Level of skills on leaving learning is not good enough with unrealistic expectations. Employers must realize, however, that employees still need to grow. They don't come out of college as the finished article. Higher education can't deliver that fully rounded employee. A culture of wanting to embrace new starters needs to be engendered, not just people who've had 3 to 5 years experience. And a generalist IT route also needs to be promoted, retraining, reskilling people who can demonstrate the necessary aptitude. And it's proving very hard to recruit security teachers. Teaching needs to be promoted as an exciting option to both students and employees. Next slide, Claire, please. So we need to continue to promote the things that work well, that I talked about in previous slides. We need to recognize that universities also operate in a market and need to attract students as well from a wider catchment area, both national, international, not just regional. We need to understand the different cultures that exist within local cybersecurity industries, the different cultures of the universities, the FAs, and how they can all work together through regular dialogue. Thought needs to be given to an immediate qualification, intermediate qualification in cybersecurity, along the lines of finance, where you have trainee accountants, so people that you can trust with a certain level of expertise, but not full level of access to your accounts. Greater use needs to be made aware of the resources of the large vendors, AWS, Cisco, Microsoft, etc. These vendors are very willing to help to develop their markets, and we need to make greater use of them. And perhaps create a series of cybersecurity labs where people could play on equipment without direct contact to the networks to help people understand and develop their skills. Next slide, please, which I think is my penultimate slide. Yep, so what next? Everything we've talked about is in an action plan. I've got about 25 volunteers who are going to help me with this work from across business, learning, public and government. We're resetting up the working groups from October with support again from DCMS, and we're going to feed that work into UKC3's plan. As I've said, we'll start as soon as as soon as September, when CyberFirst is out the way. And my last slide, please. So thank you very much. I keep coming back to this. There's so much going on. If you feel like you can help, please get involved. And we need all the resources that we can. You don't have to be technical to be involved. And we're happy to get any person from any walk of life. Thank you very much. Okay, that's just trying to ring me there. Meera, Thomas, are you there?
Here. Thank you for that, Phil. It's really interesting. It's been really exciting to be a part of the CyberFest, and thank you so much for having us. I've been I sat in yesterday. It was really interesting talk about innovation and education today, which fits in really well with the work that we do. So just a brief introduction to Thomas and myself. Thomas, I'll start, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So I'm one of the main founders of Cystel. We're based in Newcastle. Cystel was set up out of frustration, I would say, because I've spent 20 odd years in the field of cybersecurity. Spent a lot of my work in the kind of defense sector, looking at cybersecurity, linking it to terrorist activities, but also spending a lot of my time with hackers. I've chased hackers around the globe to speak to them and to sort of understand the software development process that they engage in. And I think, and as an academic as well, so I've spent, so we are, I think we have a combined experience of about 60 odd years in our team of being academics for a really long time. So it was set up simply because we are looking at this growing gulf between how hackers think, work, and what we are doing in terms of education and in the industry isn't really sort of bridging that gap, which is why we are seeing attacks constantly going up instead of down. And that's why Cystel was set up. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of introduction as to what we do. Let me share my screen. So today we're talking about what is missing in cybersecurity education and what are the key skills that we need going forward for Industry 4.0. So like I said, so the core team is Thomas, who's here with us, is Juan, who is one of the directors, and myself. So we do a range of things. So we're a slightly different breed of companies because we are engaged with the industry. We do consulting, we offer consulting services. We are also engaged in product development. We're working on a really exciting project right now with Northumbria University, developing an AI-led product for cybersecurity. And we have Cystel Academy, where we work very closely with the BCS, the Chartered Institute of IT. So why cybersecurity? What are the key issues that we've seen? What is it that we're actually looking at? Over the next 5 years, we are going to see even more losses due to cybercrime, and this would be an unprecedented amount to 5.2 trillion, which is actually the combined GDP for France, Italy, and Spain. So it's not going down. If anything, it's scaling up. And in contrast, we've also seen that the kind of cybersecurity workforce gap has grown to more than 2.9 million people globally. So while we are seeing attacks going up, we're saying that the job market is asking for more people to join cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is complex, and this takes me back to what Phil was saying, that it's a very complex system. It's got so many different skills and so many different roles in it. And when you combine that with the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0, and see how that fits into that, we are looking at a very, very complex system here. So I'm going to sort of take this to you, Thomas, because you want to talk a bit about Industry 4.0 and cybersecurity here.
Thanks for this, Meera. Hello, everyone. Yes. So we're going to look at this, and it's becoming ever more complex. So what is Industry 4.0 actually about, right? So Industry 4.0, we know that it resulted in Germany. It was an initiative meant to strengthen the economy, to support the promotion of full computerization of everything we do in manufacturing. And then eventually this emerged into something not just relevant to the manufacturing sector. If we look this up today, we have Education 4.0, Warehousing 4.0, Logistics 4.0, I don't know, Service 4.0, everything is 4.0, right? And in addition to this, all functions of an organization, they are also influenced by Industry 4.0. So whether you're talking about HR, whether you're talking about finance, whether you're talking about supply chain, anything goes really. Now, Industry 4.0 also provides the industry solutions to deal with huge data volumes. So we're also looking at big data. One of the previous presenters in one of the sessions about innovation yesterday touched on this quite nicely. And then we're also looking at developing human-machine interactive systems. And we are trying to improve the communication between digital and physical environments. Now, this is not where the complexity ends, right? Because we've just learned cybersecurity can also be fairly complex. Now, what are cybersecurity education and training then about? And this builds a bit on what was said previously. So cybersecurity education is about teaching students, whether they are beginners, whether they're more mature students, to essentially critically evaluate the security of a computer system, to differentiate between different types of attacks, to critically assess the impact and to examine suitable strategies, policies, approaches to mitigation in light of the legal framework they're operating in, the social framework they're operating in, the ethical framework, of course, they're operating in, and of course, in relation to professional issues. Now, there's a challenge, as we can see, because if we combine Industry 4.0, what I just said, if we combine that with cybersecurity, then things can become rather complex, especially if we say, well, we need a business angle to this as well, because no organization introduces Industry 4.0 just because. There's a business angle to this. And there's this introduction of Industry 4.0 essentially means that organizations are facing unique challenges due to the threats of cybercrime. And due to the use of information technologies that Industry 4.0 has led to or will lead to in the future. Now, for instance, the widespread use of the Internet of Things, which is a good term to use, but I like even better or the term Internet of People, because we as people, we make decisions in terms of which things we're going to use. Organizations make decisions in terms of which things they're going to use in their environments. And so the widespread use of the Internet of People or the Internet of Things essentially leads to an increased number of interconnected organizations, whether that's for R&D purposes, whether that's in supply chain context or in general. And hence the attack surface has suddenly increased because of that. Now, if you think about this, right, when COVID started, people worried about, bring your own device, that's a bit radical because we don't know who is using what. Now imagine, and I've put a picture here of one of those modern refrigerators. I'm sure some of you have that already at home. That contains embedded computing devices that tracks the kind of groceries you buy, when your fridge is empty, when it's full, how much you pay for your groceries, and all these sort of things. Now, these devices, then they collect a lot of data, a lot of user data, which can be problematic, such as purchasing patterns, cost, and so forth. Now, the massive amount of data collected by this fridge provides the ability for a hacker to gather intelligence like they could never before, right? And so they can see schedules, they can analyze your behavior when you open the fridge, when you close it, when you buy stuff, what you buy, and all sorts of things, right? Next slide, please, Meera. Yes, so if we're relating this little example I've given now about the fridge, if we relate this now to the real environment, the manufacturing environment, for example, then what we see here, on the left, we see the manufacturing plant. Then a little bit towards the right, we see, yes, we have global facility insights. So information coming in, knowledge being shared across different facilities. And then a bit further to the right, we see the customer. Yes, we need information from the customer. We need to send things to the customer. Then at the bottom, we have third-party logistics. We need to communicate with our logistics providers. We need to track maybe the movement of the goods and the vehicles themselves. And then eventually we have our global operations on the far right, which is about, well, management. They need to be informed. They want to be informed about what's happening on the shop floor, but in all these other areas I've just talked about. And then we have R&D, and then we have obviously field services. Now, the red circles you see, they indicate, if you want, little miniature fridges, relating this to the example I talked about. So wherever you see the red circle and these ripples coming out, we are sharing information. These are essentially access points for hackers, for maybe malicious, maybe insider threats. And so organizations, individuals in organizations, they need to be aware of this. So this is the complexity we're dealing with. Next slide, please, Meera. So what does this mean, what I've just said, for younger generations, right? So this builds a little bit on, I hope, what Phil said. So younger people joining organizations, for me, they need to have an understanding of the fundamentals of information technology, the fundamental understanding of networks, a fundamental understanding of security and cybersecurity. They need to know something about servers, cloud, AI, artificial intelligence, automation, the Internet of Things or the Internet of People, and something on penetration testing. Now, the question is now, why is this important? Now, as you can see from the list I've just mentioned, there is nobody who knows all of that. So it's essentially a wish list, but we need individuals who are aware of these things and who can communicate in relation to these areas. Now, this is important because we know that technologies are evolving, especially when we're looking at Industry 4.0, and we'll see why that is in a second as well. So we need individuals who are tech and cyber savvy to some extent. Now, another thing that's important is that we live, especially now in this society in which we have a lot of digital trust. Right, so many of us will remember the start of COVID, for example, and then we received requests from our employer, maybe from the bank, to download an app, to click on a particular link. And what did many of us do? Well, we clicked. And that led to potential cyber problems. And so digital trust is actually problematic. And so we need to also create individuals, create an awareness for individuals that we're now living in this multifaceted environment with different types of technological devices. And essentially in the future, we need to develop individuals with a zero trust attitude towards digitalization. So we need to create and develop individuals who have this reasonable degree of paranoia towards the digital, despite the emergence of Industry 4.0. And I don't mean zero trust here from a people-to-people perspective. I mean from a person to digital perspective. That seems to be important here. Now, from an employer perspective, this gels quite well, or to some extent, with what Phil Jackman said earlier. We need some specialists in cybersecurity, because cybersecurity, as we can see from what I said about what cybersecurity is and what Industry 4.0 is, can be very complex depending on where we are. And so we need specialists, potentially cybersecurity leaders in an organization. But then we also need individuals with strong functional and processional understandings of the business functions, because every business function uses some form of digitalization. Every business runs in processes. So we need individuals who understand the business processes, regardless of the business area. Plus, these individuals, they should have some form of cybersecurity awareness to be able to talk to cybersecurity specialists, or to talk to each other, even if they're not specialists, in order to at least have a basic grasp of cybersecurity. Now, how can this be achieved? Now, we just heard about T-levels. We heard about different kinds of qualifications that can be pursued. We believe, as Cystel, that this can be achieved through BCS, the British Computing Society, because they offer a number of qualifications which are not too technical. So it doesn't scare individuals who are not tech savvy, who think they maybe are not tech savvy, who maybe think they don't know anything about cyber. But it is meant for non-technical people who can then develop a generalist understanding. And if they then see, this is actually something I would like, they can become quite technically savvy using these qualifications. And it is on a piecemeal basis. You can advance with these qualifications as you want. Next slide, please. I have a different one, but we can use that one as well. I was going to say that if we agree that we need individuals who have some form of processual understanding, if we agree that we need individuals from different backgrounds, and if we agree that Industry 4.0, the digitalization, is important for our society, and that cybersecurity is important, then essentially cybersecurity is everyone's business. It is a bit like this old mantra we heard when organizations started doing quality management. Initially, you had this little quality management department that was in charge of managing quality, and then organizations realized, oh, gee, that doesn't really work, right? Because quality, they found out, similarly to lean management, is everyone's business. And I believe, and that is, if you think about the fourth industrial revolution that Meera talked about earlier, cybersecurity is really everyone's business, whether it's the person who enters the job market or whether it's the CEO. The CEO in some countries is put to jail if they mishandle information, right? So it's becoming very important. So coming to this slide now. So we talked about new starters. Now, if we look at more experienced individuals, then cybersecurity understanding and being able to mix this cybersecurity understanding with Industry 4.0 actually results in a competitive advantage, right? And at the moment, there is a lack of sufficient information security expertise and awareness available in the market, and that essentially hinders to some extent the adoption of Industry 4.4 security measures. Now, individuals who work in organizations, they are familiar with their existing information technologies, with their existing operating technologies, but these individuals, they need to be familiar or become familiar with Industry 4.0 in their particular operating environment, because their operating environments change, and hence they need to change, and they need to develop new competencies. Now, these competencies, they could be around operational security knowledge. These are the skills required to monitor, prevent, and detect potential anomalies in relation to a particular system that was introduced for Industry 4.0. Then security aspects of new protocols that are being used by Industry 4.0 solutions. And then obviously methods to integrate security aspects in legacy systems with new information technology systems. And to make this even more complex, we also need to look at this from a supply chain perspective. We can go to the next slide, please, Meera. Now, there's a reason why this is a bit complex at the moment. And it is often the case that security-related roles and responsibilities of employees are not clearly defined. And there's essentially a minimal planning to consider safety engineers within the cybersecurity ecosystem in organizations. And hence, organizations who implement Industry 4.0 will probably experience this, that there's a lack of resilience and an increased level of vulnerability in relation to potential security breaches, right? And this is simply because board level executives never really perceived cybersecurity as important, because they never saw it as something, it enhances my revenues or it reduces my cost base. It was simply just there. And hence, that meant a stronger focus on some form of functionality. Yes, we buy a new software that helps us to make things a bit more efficient, that maybe creates a bit more business value, but the cybersecurity aspect was simply neglected because board members are not up to speed when it comes to this. A very important example there is the cloud. Many organizations invest now in the cloud because it's more cost efficient. It allows ubiquitous access to information. And during this migration from the normal operating environment to the cloud environment, security should be considered with a high priority. However, because of cost issues, it's not. And so we need to train executives who make these decisions to be aware of this. That leads us to the next slide, Meera, please. So essentially, we need awareness training. Now, investments in cybersecurity, they should not only be driven by the fear of losing money. Industries and organizations should not look at cybersecurity as a cost, but they should start seeing it as an important business opportunity, because essentially cybersecurity, if you have employees who work at Industry 4.0 in this complex environment, and you can make your applications better, it essentially is a business opportunity because you're making your business better. You're making your processes better, right? And hence, this means cybersecurity can be a very important competitive advantage if we're using and essentially developing secure, reliable, and trustworthy products, right? And then cybersecurity is a business enabler, essentially, especially if we look at this also from a supply chain perspective and not simply a checklist. Yes, we've done the bare minimum. We've had a conversation with the CEO the other day about cybersecurity, and this person was simply saying, when we asked him what they do in cybersecurity, oh yeah, we've got the antivirus. So we've got to go way beyond this conversation, especially if we're looking at Industry 4.0. And so from that perspective, it's important, even if executives are not aware, of cybersecurity, but maybe to hire a CISO as a service or as an interim solution who then educates the organization in relation to cybersecurity. Next slide, please. Now, what can we do in terms of advancing this a little bit? We can also train organizations in relation to pre-attacks, trans-attacks, and post-attacks. Now, this is important that we generate an awareness in relation to this particular training, in relation to these particular phases, because many organizations only tend to do something once they've been hacked. But we want organizations to be aware of this prior to the attack, and hence we offer different types of training that can be implemented in the pre, trans, and post-attack phases. And finally, this is also important. Next slide, please, Meera. Oh, we've missed the slide, but I can just cover this. The final aspect has to do with business continuity, right? So organizations who have been hacked have trouble to kind of get their act back together if they haven't set up proper business continuity processes. And so training, especially at C-level, is important in relation to how to manage business continuity, because the pain reduces massively once an organization has been hacked and proper business continuity mechanisms are in place. Next slide, please, Meera. That's it for my side.
Thanks for that, Thomas. So we've just had an overview of how cybersecurity sits in and how that is a part of the Industry 4.0. And if you look at the skills that are needed, so now let's go back to the cybersecurity skills that we were talking about earlier. If you look at the technologies that are on the forefront of Industry 4.0, those are mobile, internet, cloud technologies. It's to do with IoT, it's robotics, automation. So these are the key drivers of Industry 4.0. And the comparable skill sets are, again, skills in cloud computing, in data mining, so big data skills. It needs skills on mobile development and, of course, cybersecurity skills. So if you take that into consideration, what we are seeing is essentially what we are likely to see going forward is a bigger disruption to the future of work. We've already seen that with COVID, but what is to come next? What we are going to see zero-hour contracts becoming the norm. We've seen a growth of that recently in sectors that we never imagined, like academia. We are going to see the EU shift and change in form. We've seen a lot of issues around climate change. We will see a lot more disruption in the use of technologies. To some extent, we have seen COVID accelerate all of this. We were talking to the ex-CEO of the Co-op recently, and he was saying how now the entire warehouse is taken over. They can only use AI. They only use robots in that. And just about 5 years ago, it was a very, very different scenario for them. So we've seen that shift in how quickly sectors like healthcare, pharmaceuticals are actually adopting off-the-shelf AI. We will see reverse migration. We work very closely with the DIT, the Department of International Trade UK, and we were in a meeting with companies from Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is rapidly shifting because they have started to realize that oil will not be in the forefront. So they are trying to reskill and upskill their education workforce. And what we are seeing is, previously, they were sending students over to the UK. They were offering scholarships. They've stopped all of that. So Saudi Arabia is now saying, we are going to have our own skills and nurture and educate our own people. So we're seeing reverse migration, if you will. There's also change in employee values. In the past, it was great if you stayed with one company for 20 years, but with zero-hour contracts, what we're likely to see are people working for different companies at the same time. Okay, so next slide. So if you imagine the future, what does the future look like? What are we likely to see in 2030? We're going to see a shift in higher education. And then predominantly what we're going to see is that higher education become experience hubs. It's where, students get an immersive experiential learning. rather than the whole upskilling process, which will happen within the context of companies, we will see a lot more engagement between higher education and other kind of public sector organizations and companies as well. And to some extent, I think it goes back to what Sam was talking about, and we're seeing that happen already, but we will see this ever more. Education will become a component of work. And we're already gradually getting that, but this will take a different, this will speed up, if you will. Reskilling, upskilling will be key. One of my doctoral students happens to be the head of HR for IBM Australia. And in our discussions, so she was talking to me about the IBM garage model, but they're now trying to completely shift their existing workforce into doing something new, because they know that there are about 4 or 5 levels within that organization, they in the next 5 years will go. It's all going to be automated. So what do you do with the existing employees? So they're trying to rapidly reskill, upskill based on learning needs and based on interests as well. So we're going to see a lot of shifting partnerships with different kind of models. We will see, like I said, work that becomes more project-based, because people work in kind of shorter contracts. It'll be more flexible and free kind of working, and multiple employees will then come into play as well. Okay. So what are we in Cystel doing to support the future of work? So this is why we got into the space, because we started working with the BCS. As academics, I think we have seen, every time I talk about cybersecurity in any business school, it's almost like, don't speak to us, because this is not what we do. We want to make cybersecurity, AI, big data, everybody's business. We want to reorient curriculum towards the future of work, because if they don't pick it up now, they will be left out. We want to promote new forms of learning through consulting clinics, because when we talk to businesses, they kind of tell us that placements don't work, that they're very good at fetching coffee, but not really in actually going into these organizations and being able to pick up work. We want to change that. We want to emphasize lifelong learning, and how can they get parallel certifications alongside the main degrees that they're working towards. How do we make technology accessible through laddering? So I come from a science background. I did degrees in physics, but I know for a lot of people, this is the unknown. If you take students from business school, from design, from other areas, they're not interested, or they think it's not their business to learn cybersecurity AI. We want to change that. We were in conversation with somebody who got an huge grant to bring women into coding, and so they were telling us that it doesn't work. They've gone out to offer coding skills for free to women and younger girls, and like Phil Anderson was saying earlier, that did not work at all. So they have left standing there holding this large pot of money and can't give it away. So why is that happening? Because we don't have a laddering approach. We are not really going to them and making it accessible, and at Cystel, that's what we really want to do. So we kind of contribute to our key streams, which is cybersecurity, AI, big data. We offer business clinics. We want students to have those rapid upskilling and get certifications when they study with us. We want to offer consulting clinics to students, real-time work, and have a more immersed experiential learning before they go off and do placements. We want just-in-time learning on latest industry topics, and this is because we have our feelers out there. We do consulting work. We sort of understand what are the key things that companies are actually looking at, and we want to also offer a very flexible online learning system for students. So please come and have a chat with us if you're interested. We are on a mission to change. We want to bring cybersecurity, AI, big data into every aspect of colleges, universities. We've seen a huge growth in opportunities within this field, and we want to take students there. So thank you, and please do get in touch.
Excellent, thank you, Meera. And I think that just really highlighted what we've been talking about today, that the world of work is changing completely. Yeah, we're talking people in these events around the globe. People are working from Newcastle or from the Northeast around the globe. And I think you're absolutely right. There's going to be a sort of confusion between the number of companies you work, the amount of training you do, your leisure time. It's all going to be one big lump, which you sort of have to manage, which is very exciting or very worrying, depending upon where you are. We've got a question or a hand up from Jorge, is it? Or George, or I don't know, but are you there by any chance? I don't know whether you can bring up, or if you can just put your question on the Q&A and then I can put your hand down. Can I just ask you about one thing? And I think this Thomas raised the issue of zero trust, and this is a good example of where the English language is used to mean different things in the same word. What we need is zero trust in the technology and absolute trust in the people who are. Is that right, or do you have a different view on that?
It depends. I mean, zero trust in technology is for me is a given for me. Absolute trust in the people is difficult. I would like to say that, but it's difficult, especially, you know, we're doing business internationally, so we deal with people in Latin America, we deal with people in the Middle East and in the US, and all of us have very different versions of the truth of how to conduct business and what's ethical and what's not. So trust is good, but trust and verify might be better for people. At least that's my version of the truth.
I think you're
it's
right.
interesting you say that, Phil, because it just reminds me of one example where somebody, where there was, you know, some kind of event where you could take dogs into workplace, and somebody got one of these scanners and then went around and was able to get information out of the microchips of every dog and was then able to launch an insider attack from just that. So it's interesting that you say that, but yeah, when you take that into, you know, sort of the kind of tools and technologies out there and what you can do with it, there's so many possibilities. Yeah,
absolutely. One of my favorite sayings is there's no such thing as truth, there's just perception and probability. There you go. So could I ask, if you could just hang on, please, we're just going to bring up the video of Sam's fly through of the college, if you wouldn't mind. Are you available? There you are. Right, good. Yeah. So Claire, would you be able to show the video, please? So this is your new place, Sam, eh? I think we're really struggling with sound from you, Sam, but I think the video only lasts a few more seconds, but huge amount of investment going on in Sunderland College. We'd hope to have this event live here this year. There's still not a huge appetite for live events, but hopefully something we can do next year. It's excellent to see, I think, more communal space and not necessarily less emphasis on formal classrooms. So that's really good. I think that takes back to the point that Meera and Thomas were making, is that we need to have a much more interactive process. So right, so we're nearing the end of today's event.
Yeah, that would be great.
All of the participants to come on board. I have one question that I would like to put to you, and I'm going to start with you, Sam, because of the excellent quality of your broadband. But if you had a magic wand and you could wave something, what would you like to see most of all in terms of improving the sort of reach of what it is that you're trying to do, get more skilled people into the market? What were you saying?
So it's essentially a two-pronged approach. So what I would like to see is that students who are studying business, for example, who are studying non-technology related fields, that they engage more with what we just talked about in terms of cyber. Because there are clearly jobs there, and there are very nice transitions that can be managed by not just by studying BCS, but BCS is one route. But then on the other hand, I would also like to see that technology people, so maybe cybersecurity specialists, that they engage with business analysis aspects, that they understand the business better, because we need cybersecurity for business. We don't need cybersecurity for the purpose of cybersecurity. So that we have this integration happening between training and education in cybersecurity and business fields. That's what I would like to see.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Philip?
I think, from my perspective, I think it's getting everybody on board, and it's like it goes back to the work you're looking at to do from the DCMS. It's not just there's no chance any one body, whether it be academia, whether it be industry, whether it be accrediting bodies and businesses can solve this. It truly is an area where collaboration is the best way forward, and it's academia engaging with industries to identify the problems that then feeds into the curriculum that's taught. And it goes back down even to, from my perspective, in the CyberFirst, and it's getting people interested in the subject and sparking like with a little light bulb and giving them a light bulb moment that they can achieve things as well. So I truly think it's a multidisciplinary and kind of approach where everybody's got to invest in something to solve the problem.
I agree with you, absolutely. And Meera?
Thanks, Phil. I do agree with Phil and Thomas, and I think they've hit the nail on the head. It's making it accessible, making it everybody's business. It's integrating that into their everyday lives, because cybercrime is here to stay. It's only going to get worse. We've seen that with ransomware attacks. We've seen that with social engineering attacks. It's here to stay. But I would like to add one more thing. I think for me, it's also how do we get more women into this? It's traditionally been, I think we have that problem hasn't gone away, that we aren't able to get women on board in STEM subjects generally. And I have to say, in most places where I go, when I go to conferences, etc., I can often get mistaken to be a journalist rather than somebody from cybersecurity, because there are not many women there to kind of start with. So I want to change. So how do we change that mindset? And I think this is why we believe that we need a better laddering approach to this, to very gradually ease people into security without throwing, let's say, programming at them. How do we kind of bring them in? Because cybersecurity, as you said, Phil, is so vast. You don't really have to be a programmer to be in cybersecurity. You can do other things.
Absolutely, and we've just had a comment from the audience to say that you don't really need to be involved in technology at all. There are so many roles, I think, and for us to think about. But what we've tried to do throughout this series is to encourage as many female speakers as possible. I think we've got a mixture around about 30%, which is not great, but it's better than it has been, and we need to continue that work. Not because women are any better than men, but I think we need to reflect the society that we're trying to serve. But anyway, I'm going to knock the event on its head there, because we've come up towards the end of our time. Look, I'd like to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Sam for his valiant efforts to try and beat the broadband and talk to us. And no doubt we'll speak to him later and sort out something on the video. Philip, I'd like to thank you for your insight into CyberFirst, a very important program, especially bringing people from diverse backgrounds, young girls, and people from more disenfranchised communities into the industry. Thomas and Meera, thank you very much for your insight into 4.0. It seems that the future is either a terrifying place to be in or an exciting place to be in. And
thank you very much.
My view, though, is that I think we should be optimistic about this. I think there is some fantastic opportunity around cybersecurity. And those businesses that, to me, that take cybersecurity seriously are actually better businesses, because of that they manage risk better. And so I see that as a huge opportunity. Thank you, Claire. Sorry,
Phil, I just wanted to say thank you to Stuart. I think there's somebody online who's made a few points, and can I just say thank you, and we can probably take this offline. I'm very happy to have a chat around some of the things you said. Thank you, Stuart.
Stuart is a very good contributor to these, and is helping us out actually with some of the work that we need to do. So yeah, thank you very much, Stuart. Okay. Thank you to Claire, who's battled through illness to help us in the background, and thank you to everybody who's listening. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.